In this video, I want to talk to you about why monks and lay people have different rules concerning their diet and what's okay to eat, what's not okay to eat. Basically, this is about the ethics of food. And specifically, I want to talk about as it pertains to eating meat. So, some of you may have heard or may know that monks are not explicitly prohibited from eating meat. So technically, this is Buddhist tradition, Buddhist monks, specifically the Theravada tradition. Monks are supposed to generally accept what is offered, and the logic behind that is that they're not picking and choosing what they're being offered. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is if somebody offers them meat, then by accepting that meat is not necessarily supporting the meat industry or the trade or it's not encouraging people to kill animals for that meat. If you think of the incentives for why a butcher or somebody in the cattle industry or the poultry industry or any animal um, husbandry and animal killing industry, why they would kill the animals is so that the consumers would pay for them. So technically, the butchers are killing the animals for the consumers, somebody that's going to pay for it. The consumer essentially is paying the butcher to kill the animals. And so the monks are not the consumers. They're not even allowed to use money, technically. So there is an exception to this for monks. If a monk or a nun suspects that the meat has been killed for him or her, then they are not allowed to accept it. So that tells us something about the ethics and the idea behind what makes it okay to accept meat that is offered versus not okay. So it's okay as long as it encourages the acts of generosity from the lay community, but it is not okay as long as it encourages the killing of animals. So when a lay person goes to purchase meat for themselves, that's their personal karma. If they are going to buy meat for the monk, then the monk or the nun accepts that meat, knowing that comes that meat was from an animal that was killed for that monk, then that monk would be accepting the burden, the ethical, the karmic burden of that action of killing the animal. So that's as it pertains to um, the diet and the ethics of meat eating for monks and nuns. So why are the rules? Why is there nothing in the rules that specifically addresses meat eating for lay people in the Buddhist text? So technically, it's not explicitly stated, but it is indirectly in there. Lay people should not kill living beings. That Basically, if people were to follow that rule, that would eliminate the butcher industry, the poultry, and there would be, this wouldn't even be a question. So if a layperson is buying the meat, then what they're doing is they are paying the butcher to kill the animal for them. So whether or not you are directly killing the animal or not is besides the point. You are paying somebody else to do your job for you. That is what it means. So, ethically speaking, if you don't want to kill living beings or you don't want to kill animals, you should not be eating them. You should not be buying them as a layperson. You should definitely not be supporting the meat industry, because the meat industry exists for you as a consumer. If you are no longer a consumer, then the meat industry has no purpose. And this is why, and this is exactly how, the ethics apply differently for lay people and for monks and nuns. Monks and nuns are not consumers. Um, the the meat industry does not exist in order to feed monks and nuns. It exists to feed the lay people, and it is supported by the lay people. When monks and nuns choose to accept meat, it is only if they believe that that meat was not killed for their sake that they can accept it. There are some additional exceptions, but I won't go into those. Um, for monks, for when they are not allowed to take meat, but for lay people, technically, there's nothing in the rules saying don't eat meat. But by virtue of having the um, moral rule or precept number one of to not kill, if you include animals in that first precept, then that would mean that even if you are not the one killing the animal, even if someone else does it for you, you that does not excuse you from the action, because essentially you are hiring somebody else to do your bidding for you, to do the bad actions of killing other animals on your behalf. So I hope that clears up this issue a little bit. I know I've thought about it before many times of why there are different rules for monks and for lay people. And I think this is a good way to think about it. Sometimes rules can seem very strict and confusing, but what we really got to think about are the reasons behind them. We have to think in terms of ethics. And actually, this reminds me of a story when I was traveling with a friend of mine who is a monk, but this monk, mm, he was using money at the time. And so, I mean, technically, according to the monastic rules, there's agreement amongst Orthodox Buddhists that using money is not okay for the Theravada Buddhists. However, this monk, who's a friend of mine, was using money. And I remember we went into some fast food restaurant. There was a buffet, and he, I want to say he ordered or he bought himself a hamburger. And I remember having a conversation with him, or okay, okay, gotta scratch that. This is not exactly what happened. I offered to pay for his meal, and whatever he would put on his tray is what I was gonna be paying for. And I think on that occasion, I ended up paying. I was a I was a layperson at that time. Um, he got himself a hamburger, and I paid for it. So technically, it was my offer to him. I was the one who acquired, paid for the meat, and offered it to him as a gift. However, he was the one that chose to take the meat. It wasn't me, it wasn't I who chose the meat from the buffet to offer to him. So, because he chose the meat, he made the choice for me. So I am not technically the one um, supporting the meat industry in that thought, in that decision. However, when I pay for it, I am the one supporting the meat industry. I'm the one paying the butcher. And so I remember later on we did end up having a conversation about the ethics of supporting the meat industry, and the distinction for lay people versus monks, and specifically for money using monks. And it became quite clear to me at that time that if a monk uses money, then he has to abide by the same ethical principles as lay people, which would mean that he should not he would no longer be allowed to purchase meat, so that the precept number one wouldn't be broken of killing beings. Well, I hope that wraps it up for you. Leave a comment below. I look forward to your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good rest of your Thursday afternoon. Goodbye, guys.